What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. Yeah, so chapter 20, God's speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai. That's kind of all you really need to think about before we hop into this. So, Exodus 20, here we go. Then God gave the people all these instructions. I am the Lord your God, who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. You must not have any other God but me. Also, by the way, if you read the, kind of section title there, you realize that this is the Ten Commandments. So, also, instructions, all these words. Yeah, because this part, I am the Lord your God who rescued you from Egypt, that's not an instruction. So, might be a little more grammatically correct to say that I am the Lord your God who, say that those are his words rather than his instructions per se. But anyway, first commandment, no other God. Because if the Lord is actually God of everything, that there's no need for any other God. No other idea even of a deity even matters. Because it's all God. Anyway, verse 4. You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything that in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations of those who reject me. But I lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commands. That 1,000 generations remark makes me wonder, have we even had 1,000 generations worth of people living on the earth as of yet? I mean, if you assume the average span of time between generations being even like 20 years, that would require people to have been on the earth for 20,000 years. Which, by the standards of most scientific scholars, yeah, sure, the Earth may have existed longer than that. But I'm not sure I can recall anything that would have said people have existed on the Earth longer than that. And the kind of young Earth idea, partially based on the Bible and that timing of things, certainly wouldn't be 20,000 years to my knowledge. So, makes you wonder a bit. But anyway, so second commandment is don't make any idols. Basically, don't worship anything but God. And, really, I mean, he's saying specifically, don't make an image of anything in the heavens or on earth or in the sea, and don't bow down to anything else. But if we really think about worship and what that means in relation to praising God and giving him glory and all that kind of stuff, an idol doesn't necessarily have to be something that you have physically made either. That's what you tend to think of when it says don't make for yourself an idol, but it could also just be like mentally turning something into an idol, something that you prioritize over God. So, anyway, again, second commandment, don't make any idols. Don't put anything in your mind, as more important than God. Footnote here. So, it would say, but I lavish unfailing love for thousands of those who love me and obey my commands. See, that seems a lot more limited. That does not communicate to me 1,000 generations. So, maybe the whole 1,000 generations thought process I had isn't exactly so relevant. But, point being, obviously, if you reject God, you're bringing his wrath, essentially, upon not only you, but other people in your family, your descendants, because you have these patterns that aren't what God wants, and probably passing them on to your children and their children, and so on and so forth. But if you love God and do what he says, then that also gets passed on to future generations, and you will essentially pass on God's blessings to them as well, is, I think, kind of the main idea of that section. Okay, verse 7. You must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. The Lord will not let you go unpunished if you misuse his name. So, third commandment, don't take God's name in vain, is how it's often said. Which, the exact meaning of that has been debated a bit recently. People used to just think of that mostly as saying, oh my God, to some situation that happened or something like that. But some have argued, more recently at least as far as I've seen, that that's really, like, isn't it even worse to kind of use God's name to serve your own ends and wants, and basically to manipulate people? And I would say, yeah, that's probably true. I would consider that worse. Now, that's not saying that either one is necessarily okay, but yeah, I think, there's some merit to not being so focused on the, OMG kind of idea, and perhaps being a bit even more concerned about people misusing God's name to, try and just get things that they want or to manipulate people. Anyway, verse 8. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Which, feeds back into the situation a couple of chapters ago with collecting the manna to eat and all that kind of stuff. Really, that was the initial establishment of the Sabbath for God's people. And this is why God wanted that, to kind of have a reminder of the creation, a reminder that really it all comes from God, and also just a reminder that, hey, even God, rested after 6 days. And so, in order to follow God's example, so should we. We should also take some time to just rest, be with God, just appreciate his creation and what he's given us and things like that. And basically, I seriously don't even know who would be excluded from all the different people that he lists here. Because, it says you, sons and daughters, male and female servants, livestock, and foreigners. Technically, it doesn't mention the wife. Huh. But, is the assumption that this is being spoken to all of the adults? Because if so, then you is, obviously it's a plural you, whether only referring to men or to adult women as well. But in any case, I'm thinking this you here is just referring to like all adults who, are in charge of households. Anyway. Okay, moving on. Verse 12. Honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land of the Lord your God is giving to you. Man, I kind of butchered saying that, but whatever. Oh yeah. By the way, backtrack a little bit. So, first commandment was don't have any other gods. Second commandment, don't make any idols. Third commandment, don't misuse God's name. Fourth was remembering the Sabbath. Fifth is honor your father and mother. What exactly honor means there, there's the obvious show them some respect. But that doesn't necessarily mean be a pushover. Because, you can honor and respect someone without letting them walk all over you. Generally speaking, yes, you should listen to your parents and what they say. And unless you know that it's in direct conflict with God's commandments, you should follow along with it. Anyway, okay. Verse 13, you must not murder. Pretty obvious. You must not commit adultery. So, essentially, no... this is often assumed as, no extramarital relationships. But I wonder, especially because of, the culture of the time and the precedent set by Jacob and the forefathers of the Israelites, would that maybe just mean, more so don't have sexual relations with someone who is someone, basically don't have sex with another man's wife or something like that. It certainly doesn't hurt to go with the more limiting definition of just no, like, just husband and wife and that's it. But I mean, in context and given the people and what they did in that day and age, they often had female servants that would be, given to the man of the house to have relations with. Some of them even bore children. Once again, a la the example of Jacob and multiple others. So, yeah. If you really think about some of these for a while, maybe they aren't quite as simple as we tend to think they are. But anyway, I digress. I've been digressing a lot here. Okay. Verse 15, you must not steal. That's pretty obvious. I don't think there's any particular way to misinterpret that. It's just don't take somebody else's stuff. You must not testify falsely against your neighbor. That, a lot of people seem to think of that as, like, don't lie. But testify falsely is more like, I mean, yeah, I guess it's lying, but it's more specific than that. It's like, it's really more like gossip. It's making up a story or, falsifying a claim about some other person and what they did or said or something like that. So, really, it's more like don't slander your neighbor. Anyway, verse 17, you must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. And covet essentially means, like, you shouldn't have a strong desire to possess whatever it is in question. In this case, just things that belong to your neighbors. Because they belong to your neighbor. Like, it's not yours. It's essentially having a desire to steal. Anyway, verse 18. When the people heard the thunder and the loud blast of the ram's horn, and when they saw the flashes of lightning and the smoke billowing from the mountain, they stood at a distance, trembling with fear. And they said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen, but don't let God speak directly to us, or we will die." That was kind of what was alluded to with God in the last chapter, telling them not to pass a certain boundary. But anyway, verse 20. "Don't be afraid," Moses answered them, "for God has come in this way to test you, and so that your fear of him will keep you from sinning." As the people stood in the distance, Moses approached the dark cloud where God was. So, Moses is telling them basically that God chose to appear in this way to, strike a little bit of fear into them so that they wouldn't pass that boundary and disobey what he just said. Given all the previous times that he gave them commands and they disobeyed, I think God's just trying to give them all the more reason preemptively to actually listen to him this time. So, backtracking through the Ten Commandments here and numbering which ones are which. So, first commandment is don't have any other god. Second is don't make any idols. Third is don't misuse God's name. Fourth is remember the Sabbath. Fifth is honor father and mother. Sixth is don't murder. Seventh is don't commit adultery. Eighth is don't steal. Ninth is don't testify falsely. I would almost substitute the word slander in there. And then 10th commandment is don't covet what belongs to your neighbor. Anyway, I think it's about time we wrap up the chapter here. Verse 22. And the Lord said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. You saw for yourselves that I spoke to you from heaven. Remember, you must not make any idols of silver or gold to rival me. Build for me an altar made of earth, and offer your sacrifices to me, your burnt offerings and peace offerings, your sheep and goats, and your cattle. Build my altar wherever I cause my name to be remembered, and I will come to you and bless you. If you use stones to build my altar, use only natural, uncut stones. Do not shape the stones with a tool, for that would make the altar unfit for holy use. And do not approach my altar by going up steps. If you do, someone might look up under your clothing and see your nakedness. So, altars basically are supposed to be built from what's natural, because if, it's supposed to be marking God's acts or presence, it's, deemed a place where God is working and moving and doing things, where his presence has been felt. Thus, it could be said that the place is holy ground of a sort. So cutting the stones would be messing with or altering or whatever, basically defiling what is holy in a sense, or at least it's a similar notion. And altar apparently must be built on the ground, probably fairly level ground. I don't know why there's such a precaution, or concern about someone looking up under your head. But it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, sure, whatever. It's what you say, God, so we'll do it. Not like it's of any detriment to follow that. There's probably some other broader explanation for that I'm just not necessarily considering or that I'm not aware of right now. But, I do wonder, though, if that harkens back to Genesis and when, basically when Noah's son, I think it was just one of Noah's sons, went into his tent after he had gotten drunk and whatnot, and mistakenly saw his father naked. And, God made it clear that was not, that was a bad thing. So, I guess there's already a bit of a precedent there. And that would sort of explain why this would be kind of necessary. Which makes me wonder if our modern concept of stages and those being elevated kind of goes against this at all. Although we generally aren't treating those so much as altars. Or are we? Because we're offering our worship to... Anyway, bit of something to think about as we close out the chapter. But anyway, that does it for Exodus 20. Okay, so that's going to do it for Exodus 20. 10 Commandments, and a little bit more as well. But, yeah, it's kind of one of the more famous passages in the Bible. But I bet you there are some details in there that you might have overlooked before, or not really known so much about, if you just heard about the Ten Commandments sort of like secondhand, as a lot of people tend to the first time they hear about them. But anyway, I digress. That's it for now. So, as always, like the video if you enjoyed it, share it with others if you want them to see. Make sure to subscribe to my channel to see more of my videos, and click the bell to get updates when I post new ones. Look down in the description for info on other social media pages and how to find and follow those. And way down below that, leave any comments you have. Whether it's related to Bible stuff or other video ideas, whatever you have for me. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next one. But until then, stay cool, people.